Heartwarming miracle. Millionaire steps in after little girl's shocking plea to end her pain. 10-year-old Emma Thompson stood nervously on the makeshift stage. The town's community center buzzed with familiar faces, friends, and neighbors who had come together for one purpose: to save her life. The warm lights shone down, casting a golden glow on her hair. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She glanced at the crowd, her eyes searching for her parents, who were standing side by side, their expressions a mix of hope and despair. As she cleared her throat, thoughts swirled in her mind. "I just want to be normal again," she began, her voice shaking. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring the faces in the audience. "I want to play soccer without feeling pain." The silence that fell afterwards was like a thick blanket, heavy with emotion. In that moment, her plea pierced through every heart in the room, echoing like a siren-esque call, leaving no one untouched. She could feel the weight of their gazes, filled with compassion and uncertainty. Some wiped tears, others exchanged hopeful looks, their small-town unity becoming palpable. But in the back of the room, a man stood apart. Michael Davidson, a self-made millionaire, watched the scene unfold, his mind racing back to his own childhood memories. He had once stood in a similar position, just a boy dreaming big as the world swirled around him. "I know what it's like to struggle," he thought, warmth flooding his chest. Suddenly, Emma was not just a little girl, she was the embodiment of every challenge life throws at us. Her candid vulnerability stirred something deep within him. He approached the microphone, a rush of determination flooding his heart. "I'll cover her medical expenses," he declared, his voice booming in contrast to Emma's soft plea. Gasps echoed through the room, instant disbelief mingling with sparks of hope. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." But skepticism rippled through the room like an electric current. A hush fell as whispers darted between the audience members. Would they accept help from someone so different? Emma's parents exchanged glances, pride battling necessity in their hearts. Then, like a fragile seed sparking life, they began to realize, accepting help doesn't diminish their struggle, it honors it. Just as hope bloomed like wildflowers in spring, a shocking revelation hit the air like a thunderstorm, threatening to uproot everything. A scandal tied to Michael, himself a product of hard times, trickled out amid conversations, igniting anger and distrust. The neighborhood stood at a crossroads, forced to confront not only Emma's plight, but their own biases. Would they come together to prove true wealth is found in understanding and unity? Or would the invisible walls of social class pull them apart, leaving them wondering if kindness could ever truly bridge the divide? As the storm of emotions brewed, the community's hearts hung in the balance, vulnerable and yearning for resolution, desperate for the light that only understanding can bring. Emma felt her heart race as she stood frozen on that stage, her little hands gripping the sides of the podium. Michael's loud proclamation echoed in her ears. She couldn't grasp the weight of those words, but the suddenly energized crowd transformed the atmosphere. It was electric, charged with surprise and reluctant hope. Murmurs erupted. Some applauded, cheers ringing out, while others shook their heads, unsure of whether to trust a stranger. Emma's parents shifted uneasily, torn between gratitude and the uncomfortable truth about Michael's past, which had just crept into the forefront like an uninvited guest. "Is this for real?" A voice from the back of the room quipped, skepticism lacing every word. Emma's heart sank. She wanted to be grateful, but the doubt tinged the moment, casting a shadow over her newfound hope. Then someone stood up, a familiar face. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the retired teacher who had always encouraged Emma to chase her dreams, no matter how small. "How can you question his intentions?" she began. "He was a boy just like Emma once." We all face struggles. Perhaps we should give him a chance. The tension in the room shifted ever so slightly. Emma's eyes darted to her parents, reading their expressions. Mom looked determined, but Dad's brow furrowed, his inner conflict clear to see. Did they dare to rely on someone who once fell from grace? Michael stood there, feeling the weight of their gazes, the mistrust like a tangible force between them. But he remained steadfast, fueled by the fierce determination to make a difference. I don't expect you to trust me right away, he said, allowing his heart to speak. Just look into her eyes. If you see even a flicker of hope, that's enough for me. I know there's more to life than money. Let us change Emma's world together. As he finished, a small gasp came from Emma. Her eyes had locked onto Michael's, and for a brief moment, she saw his sincerity. Could he really mean it? Could he actually help her? And just like that, an awareness began to stretch through the crowd, a burgeoning sense of community. While some still held on to their doubts, several faces softened. Mr. Hernandez, a local mechanic, stood up next. We could use this as a chance to band together. Maybe we can organize fundraisers? He suggested, glancing at the others, a spark igniting in his eyes. Encouragement rippled through the crowd, igniting a small fire of action. Emma's heartbeat quickened as whispers turned to plans. Could this actually be happening? Then finally, a hand shot up. What if we all share our stories? Maybe that'll help us understand each other, said Lisa, a quiet girl from school Emma remembered, her voice trembling yet strong. The idea buzzed through the air. Could sharing their struggles erase the invisible lines that divided them? Emma felt warmth in her stomach at the thought of vulnerability transforming their community. With every story told, perhaps they could weave a stronger bond, tighter than any skepticism. But in that stirring of hope, a dark flicker danced at the edges of the room. Just as they began to embrace the idea of unity, another voice piped up. But what if he's just doing this for the publicity? The tension ignited again, and Emma's smile faltered. Would they ever see him as an ally, or merely the man behind a headline? As questions hung in the air and eyes turned expectantly towards Michael, Emma held her breath. What would happen next? Would they choose to believe in the power of kindness? Or would fear win out, leaving her life hanging in the balance yet again? The air crackled with uncertainty. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and hope twisting inside her. She could feel the weight of every gaze on Michael as they waited for him to respond. Would he crumble under the scrutiny or rise to the occasion? Michael took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. He sensed the doubt, and the corners of his mouth turned down slightly. This was not about him. It was about Emma. I understand your fears, he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. But I've been in your shoes. I know what it feels like to be afraid and to feel alone. I promise you, I'm not looking for fame or recognition. I want to help Emma and anyone else who feels like they don't belong. The murmur softened, but the tension lingered like a storm waiting to break. Emma felt a surge of energy as if the room itself was collectively holding its breath, willing for something to shift. A man in the back stood up, his hands trembling at his sides. What if you can't deliver? His voice crackled with skepticism, cutting through the air. What if this is all for show? Michael's eyes narrowed, but instead of anger, there was compassion. Everyone deserves a chance, he replied, locking eyes with the man. If we can at least try to trust each other, we might find something extraordinary. Emma could see that her classmates were reacting, eyebrows raised, as they pondered over what was unfolding. The older generation seemed split. Some leaned forward, eager to foster hope, while others folded their arms, still wary. But the idea of sharing stories loomed in the air like a promise. Maybe stories are the bridge, Emma thought, gripping the podium tighter. She could feel something inside her yearning to say something, to bond with these people who had come together. After a long, tense pause, she finally spoke, her voice breaking through the thick silence. I think we should listen to each other. I want to hear your stories, and maybe I can share mine. The room fell quiet, but not silent. Whispers flitted around as people processed her words. Sensing the shift, Lisa stepped forward again. I'll go first, she declared, her nerves evident but her determination clear. My family has struggled. I once thought I could never be brave enough to share that. As Lisa's story unfolded, a tale of hardships, of tears shed over family dinners, of scraped knees and lost dreams, something began to change in the crowd. One by one, others began to chime in, sharing their own experiences of struggle, mistakes, and growth. Emma watched, her heart swelling, even as doubt clawed at the edges of her mind. This was the community she dreamed of, a web of shared burdens weaving together hearts that had previously felt so alone. Then a voice echoed once more from the back, loud and disruptive. This is all nice and everything, but I don't see how this changes anything. A woman stood, arms crossed defiantly. Emma's chest tightened. Could they ever truly believe in this moment? What if their stories didn't bring the change they hoped for? Before she could spiral further into doubt, a reassuring soft touch brushed against her hand. It was Mr. Hernandez, smiling gently. Keep trying, Emma. Sometimes hope starts small. And with that, Emma squared her shoulders. She wouldn't give up. She would fight for this moment. But as the stories continued to spill forth, she noticed Michael shifting nervously at the edge of the crowd, tension creeping back into his posture. Was the pressure becoming too much for him? Could his past reverberate through their hopeful nexus? The thoughts made her pulse race. What if the light they were building together extinguished before it truly flickered to life? She could feel the energy of the gathering shift again, but where would it land? What would happen when they peeled back the layers and faced their truths? Would they discover a path forward, or would their vulnerabilities lead them into deeper conflict? A wave of shared emotion continued to rise in the room, each story, each confession laying bare pieces of the hearts that had long been hidden. Emma focused on the faces around her. Some were tear-streaked, others raw, with the aftermath of unburdening. Their collective strength started to forge an invisible bond. Lisa's voice had just faded into a gentle hum of agreement and understanding. The crowd had finally embraced the very thing they feared: vulnerability. But the outburst from the back of the room lingered like a distant thunder. Emma stole a glance at the woman who had interrupted. She looked defiant, arms crossed tightly, yet the pain underneath was unmistakable. What if it changes nothing? Emma wondered, her thoughts darting around like a frantic bird. Would their risks be met with the healing they desperately sought, or simply turn to ash in the face of skepticism? Then Michael stepped forward, his own voice slicing through the tension. Change doesn't have to happen all at once, he declared. It can happen in small ways, in conversations like these. He gestured toward Emma, who stood behind him like a fortress. Every one of your stories has value. It can shift something within you, and that, even if only for a moment, is worth it. The energy in the room crackled again, but this time the charged silence began to shift towards something more supportive. I've watched you all grow, Mr. Hernandez chimed in, his warm voice knitting the threads of the moment. True strength isn't just in brute force. It's in the courage to share. To own your story. Each of you matters, and together, you can make a difference. Emma felt the ripple of something extraordinary beginning to take shape. But she could still see that woman with arms crossed, eyes still narrowed. Fear coiled tightly in Emma's stomach. Would that anger dissolve in the glow of revelation, or would it spark a new flame of discord? As if reading her mind, Mr. Hernandez added softly, Everyone here carries scars, Emma. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there. Let us ease the tension by allowing space for every voice. The woman shifted uneasily, but didn't move to leave. Emma took a step forward, feeling compelled to reach out. What's your name? She asked gently, trying to coax the woman's walls down brick by brick. It took a moment, but finally, the woman's fierce demeanor softened, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. Maggie, she said quietly, almost as if confessing a secret. I don't want to be disappointed again. I've seen things fall apart before. Emma nodded, swallowing hard as she understood the weight of Maggie's fear. I get that. I can't promise this will change everything, but I believe together we can at least start something. Across the room, Others murmured in agreement. Slowly, shoulders relaxed, arms unfolded, and the atmosphere shifted once more, revealing glimmers of hope that were almost palpable. The gathering surged with stories, voices intertwined like threads in a tapestry. Yet, somewhere in the back, a deeper current of tension still simmered, like an unspoken challenge. Just as Emma felt a sense of triumph blooming, Michael's expression darkened, worry pulling at the corners of his eyes. She noticed him glancing at the door, uncertainty pulsing beneath the camaraderie that had just started to thrive. "What is it, Michael?" Emma asked, concern rippling through her. He hesitated, weighing his words carefully as if they carried the weight of the world. "I'm afraid of what people might reveal next, and whether I'll be strong enough to handle it." A breath stilled the air, pregnant with anticipation. Would their bravery falter? Would the truths laid bare bring them closer or tear them apart? Emma's heart raced again, knowing that the next story could unravel everything they had woven together. As she looked among the crowd, she felt the space tighten, time slowing, leading them toward a precipice. What monumental truths would come forth next, and would they be able to face them together? The silence felt heavier now, a blanket of uncertainty pressing down on each person. Emma's breath caught in her throat, her eyes darting toward Michael. His vulnerability stirred something in her, calling forth the courage to act, to lead. She turned back to the group, drawing a deep breath. "We've created a safe space here, one that welcomes honesty. If you're ready, please share. It might be tough, but it can also be freeing." A young man with tousled hair moved first. I lost my brother last year. He was my best friend, and I don't know how to cope without him. I pretend like I'm okay, but I'm not. I feel hollow." His voice broke as he spoke, and murmurs of empathy spread through the crowd. Emma felt tears prick her own eyes. Other voices stepped forward, each story threading deeper connections, revealing wounds shared by many. Someone's struggle with anxiety wrapped around others' experiences of betrayal, depression, and loss. Each unveiling felt like a sacred offering, invoking solidarity in their collective grief. Maggie watched with a slight shift in her stance, intrigued yet cautious. Emma caught the glimmer of change in her eyes as another woman shared her own story of resilience after abuse. The crowd grew visibly closer. "I understand fear," the woman said, her voice steady despite its weight. "But if we don't let ourselves feel, we can't begin to heal. Just look around. We're not alone." The tension began to dissipate like clouds breaking after a storm. Emotions flowed in waves, crashing against the walls of doubt and fear. Emma felt Michael's gaze. He gave her a small nod, a silent show of encouragement. She could breathe again. But just as hope swelled, the door swung open, pulling the attention of the room like a magnet. A man stepped in, his presence immediately demanding. He was tall, with sharp features that seemed etched from granite. His eyes, however, were fiery, and Emma felt a chill creep through her. Who was he and why now? He glanced from face to face, landing finally on Maggie. "Maggie," he called, his voice commanding attention but lacking warmth. "You said you don't want to be disappointed again. Are you sure this is the right crowd for you?" Gasps echoed through the room, voices drowned in surprise and confusion. The collective support they had built was suddenly at risk of crumbling. Emma's heart raced. Maggie's posture stiffened again, an old armor slipping back into place.
"What do you know about me?"
She shot back, resentment mixing with vulnerability like thunder in a storm. The man stepped closer to her, his expression unreadable. "I know you've been through pain, but this isn't the way. You won't find what you're looking for here." Emma's pulse quickened. "Why are you here?" she interjected, feeling a mix of protectiveness and fear rising within her. "I'm here to make sure she doesn't make the same mistakes I did." His voice held a harsh finality that rattled Emma. As the crowd awaited a response from Maggie, Emma felt the air grow thick with anticipation. Could this sudden twist tear them apart? Or perhaps would it unveil something deeper within Maggie? Maggie met the man's gaze, breathing heavily. What would she say? As she opened her mouth, the fate of their fragile harmony hung in the balance. The room held its breath, waiting for her answer. Maggie inhaled sharply, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a response. The sudden confrontation had cracked the fragile facade she had worked so hard to maintain. Every eye in the room was on her, waiting, judging. Could she dismantle the walls she'd built around herself? Or would she retreat back into the shadows, as she had so many times before? "Why are you trying to control me?" she finally said, the strength of her voice surprising even herself. It shook slightly, but there was a fire there, one she hadn't felt in ages. "You don't know anything about what I need or want." The man's jaw tightened, as if he were bracing himself for impact. "I know you've been betrayed, Maggie. I know you've been hurt. This," he gestured widely at the room, "isn't the answer. These people can't save you." Emma felt her heart thud in her chest. She couldn't let him undermine what they had just built. "What makes you think they can't help? Look at this group," she argued, her voice rising slightly, filled with urgency. "These people, they understand pain. They know what it's like to feel lost. Maybe this is the very thing Maggie needs." The man ignored her, eyes still fixed on Maggie. "You think these feelings will take away your pain? You're chasing a fantasy." Maggie's heart raced. She had spent years running from people like him, the well-meaning friends and family who offered platitudes instead of understanding. "Maybe I am," she said softly, "but at least I'm trying." She glanced around the room, catching the eyes of those who had shared their own battles. "What I see here is real. We're not alone in this." The tension in the air was electric, each person holding their breath, feeling the weight of Maggie's words. Emma felt a lift in her chest. This was the openness they had hoped for, a sign that she might be breaking through. But then the man's expression hardened, eyes narrowing. "And what happens when this is over? When the tears dry and the group disbands? You'll be left even more alone." Fear gripped Maggie. Could he be right? Was this all just a moment in time, a fleeting connection that wouldn't last? But as she looked around the room, she saw something that dispelled that fear, a flicker of light, a spark of hope. "I want to give up. I can keep searching for something more," she asserted, steadier this time. "And I want to be ashamed of feeling." Michael stepped forward, his voice calm yet firm. "We all have our ways of healing. Maybe we can't save each other, but we can stand together. Isn't that enough?" The man looked visibly unsettled, glancing from Maggie to Michael, then back at the group, clearly shaken by their unity. "You're naive," he muttered. "You don't even know what you're doing." Maggie stood tall, unyielding. "Maybe I don't. But I'm here, and that's what matters." Silence fell in the room, thick with shared determination and lingering uncertainty. The man's intense gaze flickered, uncertainty bubbling beneath his steely exterior. The collective strength of everyone felt palpable, holding the space for Maggie, allowing her vulnerability to shine. "Just think about what I said." He finally relented, his voice now quieter, even a little uncertain. With that, he turned and walked toward the door, leaving a tailwind of confusion behind him. As the door clicked shut, Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. "You did it, Maggie," she breathed, admiration flooding her chest. But now, as Maggie took a cautious step toward the group, a new layer of doubt flickered in her gaze. Had she truly taken a satisfying stance? What did it mean to keep moving forward? Could she really embrace her feelings, stand with others, while still knowing the past loomed behind her like a ghost? The murmur of chatter began to rise around her, but Maggie felt like she was still suspended in a moment of reflection. Then, from the corner, a woman called out, "What if we all shared something we hope for? Something that might connect us even more? Would that be the key to unlocking their healing? Would it build bridges over the gaps left by betrayal and sadness?" Maggie glanced around, a mix of hope and trepidation swirling within her. Would this new approach lead to the promise of healing, or would it unearth even deeper fears lurking in the shadows? Maggie felt her heart seasonally turn as the proposal floated in the room. The suggestion echoed like a drumbeat, pulsing with a rare energy that called for action. What if sharing hopes could be the thread that wove them all together? She had spent so long thinking about what she'd lost, and now the idea of focusing on something to gain seemed both foreign and freeing. With a nervous glance toward Emma, Maggie took a deep breath, feeling the air expand in her lungs. This was a step toward really connecting with everyone, even if it terrified her. As she looked around, people began to nod, smiles forming as they caught the spirit of the idea. Hearts swelled with anticipation, the aura in the room shifting from static to electric. It felt like they were on the edge of something significant. A tall man with a canvas bag slung over his shoulder was the first to speak. "I hope for peace. I want to find calm amidst all this chaos," he said, voice steady but tinged with raw vulnerability. At his words, a ripple of agreement flowed through the room. Maggie's heart beat a little faster. One by one, others began to share. A woman named Sarah spoke about her longing for acceptance. A young man talked sincerely about wanting to feel loved. Each hope was a thread woven into a growing fabric of shared experiences: the pain, the longing, the desire for something better. Maggie felt her throat tighten as she listened. Each testimony was like a warm embrace, wrapping around her cold fears. She closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing every word, every feeling. Were they really doing this? Were they truly opening up like this? Finally, it was her turn. She felt the weight of all those hopeful gazes on her and swallowed hard. "I hope for courage," she voiced softly, the words spilling out as if they'd been trapped inside for far too long. "Courage to face my past, and to let myself believe that there is still a future worth having." The silence that followed was profound. For a second, the world outside felt distant, as if suspended in time. Then, a murmur of understanding floated back to her, signaling acknowledgement. She looked around the room again. Smiles had spread, and a sense of belonging filled the atmosphere. Fear and hesitation eased slightly as they shared their hopes. It was more than mere wishes. It felt like collective intention. A woman in the corner who had been listening intently raised a hand, her fingers trembling. "What if we set up a support group outside of this room? A regular gathering to help each other, to keep those hopes alive?" Maggie's breath caught in her throat. Could they really do that? Make it a real thing? The idea sparkled with promise, but also with the weight of commitment. Would they sustain this connection? Before she could voice her reservation, Emma leaned in. "I think that's a beautiful idea. It feels like we all want this to hold on to the hope and support each other." The discussions flared back up again, animated ideas floating through the air. The more they talked, the more Maggie felt her apprehensions fade. Just as they were gathering momentum, a glimmer of fear flickered within her. What if they all left this space, and over time, the connection faded like an old photograph? In the midst of her thoughts, the man from earlier re-entered the room, catching the tail end of their conversation. With brows furrowed, he stood at a distance, observing. "What is happening here?" he asked, his voice sharper than before. Maggie's heart raced. Would he try to dismantle this daring idea again? Or was he ready to accept that they were moving forward? His gaze was piercing, igniting tension anew. The delicate hope built up during sharing faced an unexpected challenge. What would he say next, and would it shake their fragile foundation even further? The tension in the room hung thick as the man's question lingered, slicing through the warm smiles and collective hopes like a chilly wind. Maggie's palms felt clammy, her heart racing in her chest. Was this moment meant to shatter the shared warmth that had begun to weave them together? We're just discussing an idea." Emma spoke up, her voice steady but betraying just a hint of uncertainty. "About starting a support group. A place where we can all gather to share our hopes and help each other." The man listened intently, his eyes scanning the faces in the room. Each emotion reflected was a storm of vulnerability and longing. Finally, he softened his stance, but it was unclear whether it was an acceptance of their idea or a reluctant concession. "Support groups can sometimes lead to chaos," he remarked after a pause, his voice steady. "It's important that everyone feels safe. But I want to know what makes you think you can hold on to those hopes?" The question sat heavy. Each person in the room felt the gravity of it. Maggie felt her own vulnerability creep back in as she wrestled with the thought. What if they failed? What if, despite their best intentions, the group turned into something that hurt more than it helped? But as she gazed around, she could see the determination in Emma's eyes, the hope in Sarah's face, the sincerity in the tall man from earlier. She felt empowered by their courage. "Because we're here now," Maggie said, her voice growing stronger. "We're already taking the first steps by admitting we need each other." The man nodded slowly, and a flicker of understanding passed between them. "I suppose you're right. Awareness itself can lead to change," he replied, his tone easing. "I just want to ensure that we do not end up hurting more. It's a risk, and I've seen many lose their way when it comes to hope." Maggie felt her heartbeat steadying with his acceptance. That's why it's important for us to hold each other accountable. We share our stories, but we also need to share our struggles. We can't do it alone. Silence draped over the room again, this time charged with reflection. The man shifted on his feet. He might still have reservations, but for now, he was willing to let their idea breathe. "Maybe I should join you all," he said, a hint of vulnerability cracking his guarded exterior. "Maybe I need this too." As he stepped forward, the atmosphere shifted again, lifting spirits just a notch higher. Maggie felt a warmth fill her heart. They were not just 5 individuals in a room anymore. They were becoming something bigger together. A growing tapestry of stories, binding their hopes and fears in a common thread. Yet as the meeting began organizing itself into actionable steps, a voice from the back broke through the budding optimism. "But what happens when we all start fading away again?" Someone called out, voice tinged with uncertainty. "What if, after a few meetings, we all disappear back into isolation?" Maggie could feel the pulse of fear thrumming beneath the hopeful surface. It was a valid question that could pull apart everything they had just built. "Maybe we need a commitment," she suggested, trying to squash the unease rising within. "We could create something tangible like a promise to call or check in, even if we're not in the same room." The group began murmuring in agreement. The idea ignited a spark, but Maggie's mind raced, 100 what-ifs swirling around. What would happen when life tugged them away? What if their promises fell short? Her heart pounded again, uncertainty pulling at her as she realized they were standing on the edge of something new, a daring leap into community, connection, and perhaps even heartbreak. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Was taking that leap worth the risk? Would their fragile bonds withstand the pressures of life beyond these walls? As the chatter grew enthusiastic and the plans began to solidify, Maggie looked between Emma and the others, a mix of hope and fear igniting her desire to push forward. The roots of this connection needed nurturing, but a storm was always lurking, ready to test them. "All right then," the man finally said, crossing his arms, a hint of resolve returning to his voice. "Let us see how we can make this work. But remember, it's going to take more than just words." Maggie nodded, feeling the tide of commitment wash over her. But in the corner of her mind, that doubt still whispered what awaited them in this journey. And what would it take to keep their blossoming dreams from wilting away? Maggie's heart fluttered, a blend of anticipation and trepidation coursing through her. It was as if they were all standing at the edge of a diving board, staring at the unknown below. Each plan they made was a step closer to committing to something real, something that could either uplift or break them apart. As they discussed logistics, imagining weekly meetups and brainstorming activities, the man who introduced himself as David seemed to relax further. A smile even crept across his face, as if the idea was taking root in his mind. He leaned in. "We could even write down our commitments and share them. A goal for each week, perhaps?" "Great idea," Emma exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "It would keep us accountable. And we can celebrate even the little victories." Just then, Sarah, who had been quiet since the earlier discourse, raised her hand hesitantly. "Can I say something?" Her voice barely made it over the gathering excitement, but everyone turned to her, encouraging. "What if it's okay to have weeks where we stumble?" she asked, a mixture of courage and vulnerability in her eyes. "I know I've been struggling a lot lately. What if one week I just can't make it? Or can't keep my promise? I don't want to feel disappointed, or like I've let everyone down." Maggie felt a wave of understanding wash over her. That's real, Sarah. And that's why we are here, right? To lift each other up when things get tough. We're allowed to be human. The room nodded, a collective sigh of relief palpable in the air, and the mood shifted. Suddenly, they were all in tune, where hope met authenticity. David's gaze softened, and he spoke again. Maybe we also need to build in a way to check in about how we're feeling past just our goals. Sometimes our dreams start to feel heavy, and it's okay to say, I'm struggling. It's a part of being human. Encouraged by his words, Maggie felt emboldened. Let us promise each other that it's okay to be real. We'll support each other regardless of ups or downs. Inspired, Emma nodded vigorously. And if anyone needs to talk, we create a safe space for that. Who knows how many hearts we might help along the way. Just then, a commotion at the door interrupted them. A girl, no older than 10, burst into the room, her messy hair bouncing as she cried out, "Please, I need your help." Everyone turned, surprise etched on their faces. Maggie felt her pulse quicken again as she approached the girl. "What's wrong?" The girl looked at the group, eyes wide and earnest. "I overheard my mom talking. She's really sad. I heard her crying at night. Can you help me make something for her? I think it might make her feel better." The sudden shift from their serious planning to this innocent earnestness took them all by surprise. The air in the room changed, the heaviness from their earlier discussions lifting like a fog in sunlight. Maggie exchanged glances with Emma and David, and she could see understanding sparking among them. "Of course, we can help," she said, her voice bright. "This is exactly why we're starting this group. We can all work together." As the little girl's face lit up with hope, Maggie felt a swell of warmth inside her. They were forming a bond that was catalyzing real change, not just in their lives, but in the lives of others. But as they all gathered to strategize how to support the girl and her mother, Maggie's earlier doubts resurfaced. Would this effort be enough? And deeper still, would they gather the strength to help one another when they needed it most? The excitement buzzed, filled with possibilities, yet the looming question lingered in Maggie's mind. Had they truly found the courage to become the community they so desperately needed, or was this just the beginning of their challenges? As they began crafting ideas for the little girl, their laughter spilling into the hallway, Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was about to take an unexpected turn. Maggie's heart was a storm of emotions as they gathered, the excitement swirling around like a flurry of autumn leaves. They began brainstorming ideas, team-building projects for the little girl and her mother. Laughter spilled out into the hallway, brightening the dim air that had lingered with heavier topics only moments ago. With each contribution, dreams formed into plans. "We could make a scrapbook," Emma suggested, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. "We'll fill it with messages of love and hope from everyone in the group." The little girl clapped her hands, excitement bubbling over. "I want to draw pictures too." Maggie felt the warmth spread from the girl's infectious joy and silently cheered at how small actions could ignite bright flames. This was why they had come together, to build something beautiful that reflected their struggles and could spread love beyond their walls. But even in this moment of pure joy, that lingering weight nagged at Maggie's heart. They were rising strong, yet would their connection hold when life tested them? Would they weather the storms or scatter like dandelion seeds in the wind? "Maggie," Emma's voice broke through her thoughts. "What's your idea?" Maggie blinked, focusing back on the moment. "How about we host a small gathering for the girl's family, with everyone contributing? An event, but light, with music and warmth. We could show them they're not alone, that we care." A murmur of agreement surged through the group. Hope fluttered as ideas interlocked, weaving an elaborate tapestry of community. They began planning how to surprise the little girl and her mother, painting a picture of acceptance, compassion, and love. As they swung into action, Maggie watched their spirits rise. Each person carried a piece of hope, illuminating the corners of doubt that threatened to creep back in. But just as they pulled closer, someone raised their hand. "What happens when we stop being perfect?" It was David, his brow furrowed again, but his tone softened. "What if we mess up or things don't go as we've planned?" His words hung heavy, and Maggie felt a stir of unease. Life was unpredictable. What if the event flopped? What if someone didn't want to participate? Could they withstand the real challenges? Emma's response rang out, strong and clear. We want to be perfect. Life never is. But we'll be here for each other, right? That's what counts. We can learn to lift each other up when we fall. David looked around, some tension easing as he met their hopeful gazes. Okay, he agreed, taking a deep breath. I'll help with inviting the other families. We can lean on one another. Maggie's heart ached with gratitude for this newfound unity. Their vulnerability transformed doubt into solid resolve rather than fear. The room buzzed with anticipation, their chatter brightening the atmosphere, igniting plans with undeniable energy. They worked tirelessly together, each person sharing ideas and responsibility, every hand contributing to the budding vision. Days passed, filled with frantic planning and growing excitement. Events were organized, decorations crafted, and food prepared, yet under the surface, the question still loomed. Would it really make a difference? On the day of the gathering, the community center transformed, glistening with colorful banners and tables brimming with photos, letters, and meaningful notes. But as the time approached, doubt gnawed in Maggie's gut. Would they even show? Would the love they poured into this event resonate with them? When the doors finally swung open, her breath caught. The little girl clutched her mother's hand, a hesitant smile battling her mother's own weariness. But as they stepped inside, the warmth of the room enveloped them. Emotions flickered vibrant like flames coming to life again. In an instant, the little girl's smile bloomed wide. With a soft excitement, she darted toward the scrapbook adorned with drawings and kind messages, filling the air with laughter. Their small-town community had risen not only to uplift Emma, but through her, they found a way to rally. Together for a new family in need. Maggie stood back, echoing a rush of gratitude. Voices mixed in harmony, laughter blossoming alongside heartfelt conversations. The vibrant energy flowed between them, renewed connections rekindling the inclination to support one another. As the evening winded down, Maggie caught a moment to breathe, stepping aside with a few of the others. What they had built felt more delicate than a woven tapestry, yet it glowed with the intricate bonds they had forged through trials. I think we did it, Emma breathed, her voice tempered with disbelief, but sparkled with clarity. Yeah, Maggie agreed, clenching her fists with determination. But we have to keep this alive. It's not just about tonight. It's training ourselves to keep coming back for every single little victory. The journey ahead would be challenging, but they had taken a monumental step, formed anew in the flames of vulnerability and connection. They looked at each other, each heart beating with hope. Together, they could do this, one step at a time. In that moment, Emma, Maggie, David, and the whole gathering realized that true community was forged in the fire of authenticity, a place where bonds of trust would shine brightest amid tempestuous life storms. As the night drew to a close, they exchanged promises to support one another, an invisible thread that would hold through the good times and the bad. And though challenges lingered just outside their newfound sanctuary, they would face them together, hand in hand. Because that's what they were now, one heart, one hope, a family formed from the ashes of their struggles, ready to rise higher together, uplifted by the power of love and community. If you felt that heartwarming miracle unfold, don't wait. You need to subscribe now. Hit that bell to receive all the exclusive stories coming your way. Leave a like now, it makes all the difference. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this inspiring journey. We want to hear from you. And don't you dare forget to share this uplifting video with at least 5 friends who need this transformation in their lives. The world deserves to embrace this message of hope together. Don't wait, not even one more second.